Welcome to the Soulful Surgeon Podcast with Dr. Lisa Hunsicker, a sanctuary for healthcare workers. In this space, we honor your stories, your struggles, and your triumphs. Here, you are more than your role. You are seen, heard, and celebrated. Join me as we explore conversations that nourish the heart, elevate the mind, and remind us why we chose the path of healing. This is your time. This is your place. This is the Soulful Surgeon Podcast. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Soulful Surgeon Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lisa Hunsicker. This is the place where healthcare workers come to be seen and heard. And today I want to talk a little bit more about what we do in our life and how we approach difficult things that happen to us. Maybe it's physically, sometimes it's mentally. And as you know from our last podcast 2 weeks ago, I found myself sitting in this hyperbaric chamber in Indonesia after developing decompression illness. It was the first day of our diving trip that I had been dreaming about and really just pining for months. And most people hearing that happened would immediately think that was a completely ruined vacation. But I don't really feel that way. Because somewhere in the process of doing all that, I realized that, sometimes life is going to drop a boulder. And sometimes it's in your path. Sometimes it's on your arm. And sometimes it's on your neck. We don't always have the choice of how that occurs. But it isn't really whether or not the boulder exists. But the question really becomes, how is it that we're going to carry it if we have to carry it, or how do we maybe flow with it and move with it and get to a different place? Now, if you've never heard the boulder analogy, it really has to do with three parts, and it has to do with pebbles, rocks, and boulders. And so I have to thank Patrice Washington for really educating me on this, because it really has helped me frame how I approach things and paying attention to when the universe is giving us information. And sometimes the universe is trying to tell us something, and sometimes this comes out of the blue. And, sometimes it's just a small pebble. And maybe this is an inconvenience. This could be charting. This could be traffic. This is a difficult patient, bad weather. All these little things that are pulling into our day. Sometimes it's a health warning, right? That could be just something like, hey, your blood pressure is just a little bit too high. Maybe you have a little cough. And these are the things that we tend to ignore and we don't pay attention to. And then the universe gives you a rock. And this is a bigger version of the pebble. And, this might be something that the universe is trying to get your attention, or these are just things that are happening in your world. Maybe this has to do with your job. Maybe it's changing. Maybe it's a different location. Maybe you're doing something different. Maybe you're retiring, or maybe you're starting a new job. What's going on with your finances? Is there something stressful going on in your finances? Illness? Is there some sort of conflict either at work, at home, with your kids, with your parents, with your spouse? I mean, all these things can occur. Or maybe that illness is a lot more involved. And then the boulders arrive. And sometimes, the universe has been giving you previews to that. And, maybe that cough is turned into lung cancer, or that lump has turned into breast cancer, or now you have a DVT that was perhaps the rock, and now you have a pulmonary embolism or a stroke because you had a PFO. And so all of these things can build up, and it could be the death of someone you love. It could be a divorce in your family. These could be medical complications. These could be natural disasters, right? If you're in Hawaii, a fire. Here in Colorado, we have fires all the time. Maybe there's a hurricane. Maybe there's a tornado. All these things. There's all these life-changing situations that occur. And all of a sudden now you're met with something really, really heavy. And so the one thing that I feel like we can guarantee ourselves is that boulders are going to arrive, right? We can't make these things not happen because we can't necessarily predict them all, but not everybody gets the same one. So it isn't even like we can kind of do an algorithm, which is what we love to do in medicine. Of like, well, if this happens, then this happens. And then and then, you know, if then, and it's all pre-prescribed. And so all of a sudden the boulder hits and you start your algorithm and then you're to a better place. And that's not exactly how that goes. And eventually everyone's going to get one. And so really kind of what this made me think about is Aikido. And I love martial arts. I'm a black belt, if y'all don't know. And so one of the things, as Taekwondo, that that is a very offensive kind of martial art and defensive. But the thing that I love about Aikido, and I love to watch people do Aikido because those artists really they take the fight and deconstruct it, and instead of fighting and forcing, they redirect the energy and they move with it and they get out of the way, and they're not really surrendering to it, but they're cooperating with the reality, which is the force of the other opponent. And perhaps this is what we need to be doing. Maybe when we're doing this boulder work, we need to bring out our inner Aikido. And so if you didn't hear the last podcast, what happened in Indonesia was we got there, had a couple days to relax, and then on the first day of diving, I developed decompression illness, and then I also had to be taken to the local dive chamber and had to do 2 days worth of decompression. I also had developed a head cold, which didn't make it any better. And so at that time, I asked myself, okay, based on number one, my treatment, how do I feel? And, what are my restrictions? What are the other things that I can still do? I can't dive. And I think if I were in a different place, that could have ruined my entire vacation because that was the whole reason that we went there to go underwater and go see all the critters and be with the pals that I dive with. And that simply was not going to happen. But I could snorkel and I could go on the boats and I could be with my pals and they could be below me. And yes, they're going to see more of the critters than I did, but still, I'm going to have a good time. And I really can't control this process, right? I didn't control getting, the decompression illness. I didn't sign up for that and say, hey, today I think I'm going to do this, to tap in. But I also, I can decide how I'm going to respond to that. And, when you look at it, here I am on this beautiful island, staying in an oceanfront dive resort. It's beautiful. And I can choose how I respond. And I can't fly, so I have to stay there, which is fabulous because that was the plan anyway. It didn't disrupt any of my travel, it didn't disrupt work. And I got to do pretty much most of the stuff. And I did some land based stuff that we maybe weren't necessarily going to do, but it was fabulous nonetheless. And so I accepted the reality of what had happened. And I didn't defeat the force because deco happened and I had it. But I redirected the energy of that whole thing that could have completely ruined my vacation, and in fact, did not. And I had a fabulous vacation. So I think when we talk about this and we're dealing with boulders, I think reality occurs and we want to fight it. And I think that's our natural inclination. And we're always doing battle with disease. That's what we do with our patients. We're trying to battle the patients to do the things they need to do. We're trying to understand and know what the diseases are. And we're trying to battle those because we're always trying to get to the win. And, whenever these difficult situations occur, we're going to argue with it. Sometimes we try and deny it. A lot of times we get really angry. We become victims and we keep asking, why is this happening to me? And, in full transparency, when I was laying there seeing this rash develop, knowing exactly what that meant, I'm in deco. I need to go to the chamber and I'm not going to be able to dive. Like, I cannot believe this is happening to me. Why is this happening? And of course, it's at the beginning of the vacation. Why couldn't it have happened at the end of the vacation so I could have gotten some dives in? But then you have to harness that and just kind of reposition your focus and really say, wait a minute, that that this is just making the boulder even larger. And I'm adding layers to it that just absolutely don't exist. And I'm creating that. So the event didn't change. What happened happened, but my relationship to it really changed. And so the interesting part is that by the end of the trip, I really had changed my relationship with the situation, and their situation was changing. And that enormous boulder had really become grains of sand. And so literally, I spent the rest of the vacation in the sand. I was walking on the beach. I was laying on the beach and relaxing with friends. I meditated on the beach. I snorkeled over the sand. I relaxed in the very place that I thought was going to be taken away and ripped from my vacation. That boulder never disappeared, but it was my relationship to it that changed. And eventually it evolved and it became the sand beneath my feet. So I really want to, I want to have you consider this. And we really need to get our mind in the right place for this because life does have very, very trying times. And we spend so much of our time really trying to avoid the boulders. But resilience has nothing to do with avoiding them. Maybe you get lucky and that would be great. But maybe resilience really has to do more with learning to let time and wisdom and perspective and acceptance, right? Because you can't just deny it. Really kind of wear this down, and then eventually, at one point, and for me, I was very lucky. It was really within 2 days. It was simply sand beneath my feet, and this might be 2 days. It might be 2 weeks. It might be 2 months. It might be 2 years. It might be 20 years. But really, I think that we have to really adjust our expectation and we really have to adjust really the outcomes, right? We've talked about what are reasonable outcomes. I think that time and acceptance in the way that I chose to meet that experience, it slowly weathered that boulder into sand and made it possible for me to move on. And I think that we need to really start focusing on this because I think these boulders happen to us in practice all the time. We have very difficult outcomes. Maybe we have a patient who dies or a complication. We have to deal with these. And we also have to maintain our own sanity and our own heart and soul in this process. And we have to begin to move with them. So I'm going to leave you with that today. My my Aikido maneuver for boulders. And I hope this was helpful. Let me know in the comments and feel free to DM me if you have any situations that you feel like you've been very resilient in and how it is that perhaps you had an Aikido maneuver or perhaps some other version of that so that we all can learn from that because the boulders are coming. They're always coming and they're always here. And let's talk about all of us talking about how we can really not embrace them because nobody wants to embrace it, but how to really flow with them in the best, safest way. Thanks so much. And if this episode resonated with you, please feel free to share it with your healthcare colleagues. And if you would like to work with us or have any suggestions, please reach out at soulfulsurgeon.com. Thanks and have a great rest of your day. Thank you for joining me on the Soulful Surgeon Podcast. I hope today's conversation offered you reflection, encouragement, and a reminder that you are not alone on this journey. If this episode spoke to your heart, please share it with someone who might need it as well. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a moment of connecting with healthcare workers all over. You can find us on the web at soulfulsurgeon.com. You can find us on Instagram at Soulful Surgeon. And you can find us on LinkedIn at Lisa Hunsicker, MD. Until next time, take care of yourself the way you care for others. And remember, your story matters here.